Welcome to Journey at Home, where we create content to make it simple for you to follow Jesus. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't so you can keep up with everything we are releasing for you. Let's get started. This episode is for those of you who call Journey your home. Now, if you are not a follower of Jesus, what I'm about to share can be really helpful for you, but it is not expected of you. But for us Jesus followers, well, it's time we stop ignoring this direction from Jesus. So one day about 2,000 years ago, Jesus was standing on a hillside surrounded by thousands of people, delivering some of the most brilliant and unexpected teaching that has shaped our Western civilization in some really profound ways. This teaching was Jesus defining in very real, tangible, actionable ways what it means to follow him fully and participate in his kingdom. In other words, if you want to know what spiritual maturity looks like, if you want to go deep with God, well, Jesus explains right here exactly how to do it. This is where Jesus first taught the Beatitudes. Maybe you're familiar with those. Those 8 blessed are sayings. It's where he called his followers to be salt and light. It's when he made it clear God's standard for us was so high, well, all of us fall short of it. This is where he reminded us not to worry, not to judge. It's where he stressed that everyone who hears these words of mine and puts them into practice is like a wise man who built his house on the rock. And right here on this hillside is where Jesus also revealed to us what God sees as his greatest competition for our devotion and our worship. What could that possibly be? What do you think it might be? Well, this is the second and final episode of our short series we're calling This Changes Everything. And the goal of this series is to help us become aware of who or what we worship in life. Now, if you don't see yourself as a worshiper, well, let me help you. Everybody worships because worship isn't a religious thing. It is a human thing. If you consider yourself a Jesus follower, you worship. And if you don't believe in God at all, you still worship. And everybody in between, well, you all worship too. Because worship is giving highest value to something. And we all value something most in life, don't we? Now, you had better know what that is for you, because whatever you worship shapes and defines you. You become like who or what you're most committed to. Which means I can predict the kind of person you're going to be in the future by what you value most now. And you can do the same for me, can't you? So last episode, I left you with a homework assignment. I invited you to pay attention to who or what gets your greatest allegiance, attention, and affection. In other words, what do you prioritize most in your life? That's getting your loyalty and allegiance. What do you pay attention to most? What do you think about most? Where do you spend your free time? That's getting your attention. And who or what do you love? What are you passionate about? That's getting your affection. You follow the trail of these 3 clues, and you'll find out what you worship. Or, if you want to take a shortcut, Jesus says there's another place you can look. Just look at your relationship with God's chief competition for your worship. See, right in the middle of his teaching on the hillside that day, Jesus looked at this crowd of everyday, ordinary, living day-to-day Jewish people, and he told them this. He said, you cannot serve, and service is worship, right? You cannot serve both God and. Now, what do you expect Jesus is going to say next? This is the thing that has the potential to prevent people from experiencing God in a more personal way in their lives. This is what can distract people from following Jesus fully. So if you were Jesus, what would you have ended this sentence with? Would you have said you can't serve God and sin? I mean, that would make sense. What about God and self? Okay, I could see that. How about God and Satan? Surely he's a problem, right? Well, not according to Jesus. He looked at these Jewish people living day to day, trying to make ends meet, hoping they had enough food on their table to keep their bellies full for one more day. And he said, you cannot serve both God and money. According to Jesus, God's chief competitor for your heart is your money, or more specifically, what you are trying to get with your money. Because how you use your money is the truest indicator of what you worship. Now, before you get all uptight and nervous, go turn this off. Instead of me trying to convince you this is true, I just want you to listen to Jesus' point of view. Here's what he said leading up to this statement. He said, do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, where moths and vermin destroy, where thieves break in and steal. So treasures on earth are whatever you value the most, okay? They may be visible, like a possession, experience, a product. Or they could be invisible, like a sense of security or pleasure or companionship. But whatever you give your allegiance, attention, and affection to, that's what you treasure. It's what you worship. And whatever you treasure and worship, well, guess what? You're going to try to accumulate. You'll be driven to store it up for yourself. because you can never have enough of what you value most. Now, Jesus knew that about all of us. It's a common human thing. And interestingly, he doesn't tell us to stop storing up. He says, instead, I want you to store up for yourselves treasures in heaven, where moths and vermin do not destroy, where thieves, they don't break in and steal. So this is an invitation to use your money to store up what will last forever, instead of storing up what's going to be temporary. To use it in a way that is secure and eternal versus insecure and earthly. In other words, Jesus is saying, make sure your top priority with your money is to use it to value me and my purposes in this world. Just after this, he says, hey, I know you need to eat and live indoors. I want you to use what I give you to do that. But I want your first priority to be me, because that's what worship looks like. Now, let's hit pause and ask a really important question. Why do you think Jesus is talking to us about how to use our money? Money's actually the most recorded subject he talked about, but he never asked anybody for money for himself. He never took up an offering, best we can tell. That's pretty interesting, isn't it? So why all the interest in money? Well, because he knew something that you and I don't want to admit. Are you ready for this? Jesus said, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. This is how powerful your money management is on your spiritual life. Where your money goes, your heart follows. Or to say it another way, wherever you put your money is what you'll end up valuing most in life. You show me where your money goes, I'll know exactly what you value most, because money shapes what we worship. Now, do not misunderstand. Jesus is not anti-money. Money is not the problem. Money is simply a tool, but it does direct what you worship. This is why Tim Keller once said, money isn't an idol. Money reveals what our idols are. Money reveals what our heart worships and values most, right? Now, if you don't think this is a big deal, you should heed this warning from Jesus. He went on to say the eye is the lamp of the body. To which, if you're reading this, you're like, well, wait a minute, I thought we were talking about money. Well, we are. Your eye represents your desires, and your desires direct where you put your money. So Jesus says, if your eyes, your desires are healthy, well, your whole body's going to be full of light, which was his way of saying you'll be free. You'll see life clearly. If you've ever had a moment or season of life when you were here, you know how incredible it is. When you have this kind of clarity, God's more personal to you. You better understand his purposes for you. You wake up with a sense of meaning every morning. But Jesus says, if your eyes are unhealthy, your whole body will be full of darkness. If then the light within you is darkness, how great is that darkness? Now, he is still talking about the connection between our money and our worship. And he's going, I designed you to use your money as a tool to deepen your worship of me. I designed you to desire things bigger than and beyond yourself, so you would prioritize me, so you would live for my purposes for you. But if your desires get unhealthy, your money goes in the wrong direction, it drags your heart to the wrong places, your life gets upside down because you're valuing all the wrong things. You're storing up things that you're going to lose. You're worshiping something that can't deliver what you actually need. So, pay attention to what your money shows and encourages you to worship. Because again, according to Jesus, no one, you're not an exception to this. Jesus said, no one can serve two masters. Either you will hate the one and love the other, or you'll be devoted to the one, despise the other. You cannot serve both God and money. You cannot worship God if your money is dragging your heart away from him into anything else this world has to offer. So money is spiritual. Money is powerful, and money is shaping and revealing what you and I value most. Now, just to be clear, this is why I talk about generosity so much. This is why I want us to be the most generous church in the world, because generosity is a primary indicator of spiritual maturity. Generosity is an indicator that your worship, what you value highest or most in your life, that your worship is in the right place. And I know if your worship is in the right place, your life is going to end up in a great place. You'll live with purpose and meaning, significance, with freedom, with peace. Your relationships are going to be amazing. You'll be filled with gratitude. And you will experience God personally at work in your life as you partner with him and the role that he created you to play in fulfilling his purposes in the world. Now, I know that would be true for you because I've experienced that, and I have enjoyed that throughout much of my life. And that's all I want for you. Life is so much better on this side with Jesus. But if you're not a generous person like Jesus invites us to be, and this may upset some of you, but I'm saying it because I care about you. If you're not a generous person like Jesus invites us to be, you aren't worshiping Jesus as your highest value. Doesn't mean you don't believe in him. It does mean you're not following him. And it does show you don't fully trust him. And that's what Jesus said himself, because again, he said, where your money goes, it drags your heart and your worship right along with it. Now, I'm sure somebody watching this is going, Matt, generosity is not the primary indicator of how deep or mature I am spiritually. And you're right, it is not the most powerful indicator. Loving people like Jesus loves us is the most powerful indicator. But let me remind you that while you can give without loving, it is impossible to love like Jesus loves us without giving. God's love is expressed through a million expressions of generosity to us. None were greater than when he gave his life for us. So if you don't have an intentional plan to invest your money into what God's doing in the world, you have a generosity problem, which means you have a worship problem. If you are not a priority, I'm going to give first, percentage, I'm going to pick a generous percentage of my income to give, progressive giver, I'm going to keep trying to grow in generosity. If those three things aren't true of you, you have a generosity problem, which means you have a worship problem. If you have multiple stories of how people's generosity towards you has been life-changing for you, but you've got very few stories of how your generosity has been life-changing for others, you got a generosity and a worship problem. People who value Jesus most look most like Jesus, and you cannot be like him without being generous. So if you're a Jesus follower, I want to challenge you to be honest with yourself. What does your money, specifically your use of it, what does it reveal you worship? And if it's not Jesus, what are you going to do about it? My encouragement to you would be to do what Jen and I have done our whole lives. Just pick a generous percentage of your income. Start giving it away first wherever God shows you to give it. You will never regret that, I promise. But here's the flip side. If you do not believe Jesus and what he says, you can ignore this. And guess what? Nobody will probably ever say a word to you about it. You can just rationalize to yourself why your situation is different. You're the exception. You don't have enough money. You don't trust those people. You don't. Nobody's going to challenge you on it probably. But before you make that choice, which is way more comfortable, let me leave you with one last question. What will a life without generosity cost you? You owe it to yourself to answer that. And I'm going to suggest it's going to cost you a lot. It'll cost the people around you a lot. You probably should figure out what that cost is and make sure you're okay with it. Because you will never have a mature, deep, personal, purposeful relationship with Jesus until you become generous. Because your money shapes who and what you worship. You get that wrong, you get life wrong. And oh, by the way, I need to remind you that what you choose determines what kind of church we become too. You're shaping our future because you're part of this movement we call Journey. So what you do in terms of your generosity, it actually matters to and impacts all of us. So we're all counting on you. But I am confident you will make the wise choice and you will put your worship in the right place. Let's be people who aren't so shallow. We just show up, sing some songs, watch a video, however you do it. No, let's worship as a way of life. Let's let our deepest forms of worship be the love and the generosity that our King and our leader calls us to show.